Welcome back to another episode of Building the Pride. I am your host, Drew, and I am joined as always by my co host, Mike. Mike, how are you?
I'm just as handsome as ever, Drew. How about yourself?
I'm pretty good. I've realized that I've left my notes in my backpack, so I'm going to need to jump off stream here real quickly to go and get those because what I want to do today is firmly noted in my notebook.
Excellent.
So, but we'll go do that here in just a second. I know right where it
All right.
is. But yeah, we're back here on a Tuesday. Unfortunately, it's not a victorious Tuesday. We love victorious Tuesdays, but this time it didn't go their way.
It
And
was super frustrating.
it was not a good game. The game was not. I think it'd be safe to say the game was in line with what we have seen from the Lions over this last month, which is unfortunate.
Yeah. It's been a rough month.
Yeah, it's not been great.
Right.
So
We had a couple wins out of those. Like we did beat Chicago after playing a terrible game and almost losing. We did beat
Chargers.
the Thank you.
Yeah.
The Chargers in a game that was probably closer than it needed to be as well. So, and we lost two that we should have won against the Packers and Sunday against the Bears.
Yeah, and not the not so distant past, we were 8-2, So the glory days. So there's been a lot out of the team, whether it's Dan Campbell basically saying like, we need to get reinvigorated, we need to get more from our top guys, and he named Jared Goff, Aiden Hutchinson. When it comes to that, Aiden had hey, Hatter's house.
Love Hatters.
Aiden had an almost tear-filled post-game interview where he just took responsibility for the mistake on the Justin Fields touchdown run, indicating that they're just not playing as well as they need to win games, and he's upset about it. So
wasn't it more the touchdown pass on the 4th and 13 that he ended up jumping off sides, ended up being a free play, and then Jerry Jacobs got burned like a marshmallow?
I love that. That was a funny saying. Aiden, I think this was Aiden's worst game of the season by a decent margin. He was, when we do our player grades, he was near the bottom for our defensive players. And that play, I think, was symbolic of what is happening to this team right now. 4th and 13, don't jump. Yeah. What did they do? They jumped. Okay, don't give up a big play. Do anything you possibly can not to give up a big play. And for the second time that the Lions have played the Bears this season, DJ Moore ran right past Jerry Jacobs. Jerry doesn't get his hands on him on the line. Congrats, by the way. And then turns his hips and runs with him. DJ Moore is one of the fastest wide receivers in the NFL. Like, the only things that run next to DJ Moore are gazelles and cheetahs. Like, you if you're another human being and your name's not Tyreek Hill, you don't try and run with
or Jameson Williams.
DJ Moore. I mean, maybe, but like what you do is you try and knock him off his route. They did not do that, which I think is odd considering how much this team wants to play man pass coverage. So
we want to take a peek at grades since we're kind of talking about it.
Well, we can, but let's just do a quick review. There's not a lot to say here that's good.
Angeloni he'd been playing really well all year. He had by far his worst game, and it shows.
I wonder how much it has to do with him having a screw in his thumb and having the cast on his hand.
Yeah.
Because he was benched for Reeves-Maybin in the second half.
And Reeves-Maybin played well, right? So let's give him credit. He played really well. He ended up with an 82.9 grade. Yeah. And he played lights out. That was the best game I've seen him play since he's been back with us.
Well, he's primarily a special teamer.
Yeah.
That is his role on this team. Is he is a dedicated rostered special teamer. But this is exactly what you want from your special teams guys. Hey, there's an injury, something's happened to the guy in front of you. We need you for 10, 15 snaps all game, whatever it is. And you come in and you're competent. He
Yep.
was more than competent in his 11 snaps on defense.
Yep.
So excellent job, Jalen. You were one of the few players I was very pleased with.
Yeah. That Kindle Vildor, I believe he was the cornerback that got put in over Jerry Jacobs because he was so bad.
Yeah.
We have to scroll away because he was a 47.2. Again, in the 40s. Again, he had a pass interference, a defensive pass interference that cost us a bunch of yardage. Again, he get torched for a touchdown. I don't understand. Like, he had a couple games where he was at least decent, like kind of in the middle of the season. The first 3 or 4 games were terrible. Then he had like 3 or 4 that were okay, like worth of a roster spot kind of quality. And now he's back like he should never see the field. Like, it was so bad again.
Yeah, it's been a bit of a roller coaster with Seatbelt Gang here.
Yeah.
This year, and sometimes that seatbelt is firmly fastened and everything's safe and good. And other times you just forget to put it on, and that's when DJ Moore makes you look like a child on the football field. So
on the offensive side, there was nothing really good to say on the offensive side. Goff had another miserable game. He was way down here at a 44.8 overall. He played miserable. 2 picks, botched snap. I counted 5 other passes that were near interceptions because it was behind the guy and just like those kinds of things where you're like, oh god, that was what I would consider a turnover worthy play. I didn't look at his numbers for turnover worthy plays, but he played absolutely miserable, and he needs to get his poop in a group for these last 4 games.
All right.
He's got to get his shit together.
Okay.
He's got to get his shit together. Yeah.
Interesting take on that term.
Yeah. Peoples-Jones only had a few snaps, but he had a nice catch. He played okay. Just not a lot good. Jahmyr Gibbs had a couple good runs, I will say. I don't know where he ended up.
He's 9th.
He ended up 9th. So nothing special there, 56.7. But he had a couple nice runs. Not a lot good coming from this game. I thought coaching was okay. I think that I've seen a lot of people complaining about Ben Johnson, about he's been figured out, and it's we're not playing well because of Ben Johnson. And I think that if you look at, he's not going to call a perfect game, right? Nobody is. So there's going to be plays that he wants back, or we're like, why did you do that one? Sometimes you're setting things up, like why'd you run on 3rd and 13 while you're setting up maybe down the road to have the defense do things a little bit differently on another 3rd and long, right? So like sometimes he does that, and you're kind of like wonder why. But when I looked back at it, because I watched the game a second time, it wasn't the play call, it was the execution, right? It wasn't the play call to throw that long pass to JMO, it was the execution. Right, it was 5 yards short. He had to turn around. It was still 3 yards short. Right, like there were times where JMO's cutting across the middle and he throws it to somebody else or tries to. A lot of dropped balls, and I think it's because it looks like when it releases from his hand, it looks like a punt end over end. It feels like, okay, maybe not that bad, but like it's definitely not a tight spiral, and it's behind the guys and. I think a lot of it is execution and not play calling. So I don't give the coaching staff as hard of a time, but they definitely, at the same time, when your team comes out and it looks like it hasn't practiced in a month because the execution's so poor, that's still on coaching, right? So I'm kind of mixed on what the grade I would give for coaching.
I don't think the coaching has been good, and I don't the last month. And I'll just kind of run through it real quick. I don't know what Aaron Glenn is supposed to do. Like the team has invested in the defense. That investment, I don't think, is on the field the way that they wanted it to be. Gardner Johnson's hurt. Mosley got re-injured. Those were supposed to be big stopgaps for this offense. I do think that they thought that maybe Jack Campbell would have a larger impact than the one he's had. I think that's largely been offset by the fact that Anzalone is playing his best football of his career this year, with the exception being this one game. He just had a kid. He just had a screw put in his thumb. He's got a cast on his hand. Like that makes a difference. Does it make this difference? I don't know. Stop it, Hatters. And
we will get to Joey's question though.
Yeah, we will get to Joey's. Hatters, you're going to get in trouble if you keep throwing spam in the chat, okay? So,
is what I would say if I smoked crack.
There we go. I knew something had to be coming. But like, also, Aaron Glenn is not out there missing tackles. If you went back to the defense and you looked at the tackling numbers, half of the defensive numbers, tackling stats, are absolutely atrocious. Look at all the red.
Really bad. So
and that's a lot of guys playing 30 plus snaps. They're just not. Like the Bears are not easy to tackle. Justin Fields is big and fast. He's not easy to tackle. DJ Moore is quick. Cole Kmet is huge. Like they're big guys, but they're also. They're in the NFL. You got to tackle them.
Yeah.
Also, I said before on our last podcast, I would have played zone. I would have played zone all game. I want eyes in the backfield to keep Justin Fields in the backfield and swarm to the ball wherever they go. They chose to play a lot of man. That's who they are. And sometimes you live and die with that strategy, but I think you need to switch it up. Dan Campbell, I'm officially over the go for it on fourth down nonsense. I'm officially over it. When it's working, hooray.
Right.
But you have Jack Fox, who you made one of the highest paid punters in the NFL. The dude has put the ball inside the 20 with regularity. At some point, even if you're on your side of the field, you got to just take the extra 25 yards of field position and not put your defense, which isn't great, in such a bad spot. And you cannot go for it on 4th and 10. The only time that you can go for it on 4th and 10 is when it's if we do not score on this possession, we have no chance to win the game. Sorry. This is ridiculous. Whether it was the fake punt from our 30 a couple of weeks ago, or the amount of times and down and distance that they are going for on these 4th downs. You want to talk about 4th and 3 from your 35? I'll listen to it. You want to talk about it at 4th and 6 on their side of the field? I'm not going to do it anymore.
Yeah.
You just have to play a little bit more field position and try and alleviate what your defense is being asked to do. You want to give the Bears 50 yards to go, to be in the red zone or whatever. That's not good enough.
Yeah, you're setting your defense up for failure.
Right. You have to play to the mark. The defense does not have elite talent on it. Aiden is about the only one who's close. I don't know that I even put him right there right now. And that's it.
Brian
and everybody else are just dudes who are out there working hard.
What about Brian Branch? I'm not maybe not elite, but I would put him better than a dude that's working hard.
He's had a couple amazing plays.
But yeah, 2 out of
But it has not been a complete product up until this point. I think that he's the second best defensive player on the team. Aleem McNeil didn't play this week. The team is not set up to absorb injuries well.
Would have been really great if we had Jalen Carter.
Side
by side with.
Did you see his scoop and score against the Cowboys?
Yeah, it's beautiful. King of beauty.
Really
Something
fast.
That would have been really handy for us.
Really fast. Let's answer some of Joey's questions here real quick.
Right.
What does Goff have to do the remainder of the season for you to believe we should keep him around? So the thing that he has to do the remainder of the season is to not turn the ball over.
At all.
That's it.
Win games.
He can play the way he played on Sunday and not turn the ball over, and I think the Lions would be pretty good.
I think we still lose.
Well, the thing the Bears did in both games that I haven't seen other teams do, but I expect them to emulate now, they took their linebackers and they dropped them straight into the middle of every throwing lane that Goff likes to throw. So at 5 yards and at 10 yards, they had their safeties up and they had their linebackers back. And they were just being like, okay, we know you love to throw crossers and hooks and shit right here in the middle of the field. And that's where we're going to be, dude. And we're going to have our hands in the passing lanes and we're going to be covering your guys. I mean, you couple that with the fact that like he has never put the ball in front of any wide receiver ever. And it makes it tough.
It's funny because it's true.
Right. But to answer Joey's second point, I don't think that you can keep him around past his current contract. So he has next year on the roster guaranteed because of his contract.
Right.
But I don't think there's anything he can do because this is the other half of Jared Goff.
This is the more common half.
Well, to be fair to Jared Goff, most of the season has been really good. 2 months of the season has been great. The last month has not. They've turned the ball over 9 times in the last 4 games. All 9 of them are on Jared Goff.
I'm just saying, like, historically throughout his career, he has been a turnover machine. Since he's been in the league, he leads the league in turnovers from quarterbacks. Leads quarterbacks in fumbles.
More than Danny Dimes?
More than Danny. Well, since Danny hasn't been in the league as long, so that number gets to be elevated a little bit more.
Okay.
But he has historically done this, which is one of the reasons. And when you look at like the pass distribution and where he's hitting people, he's not hitting these downfield. Interception, incompletion. I think this was probably the one to J-Mo.
That was the
J-Mo. It was like 5 yard behind him.
J-Mo was down there by the 40. Yeah.
Yeah. So like, I think this is what LA didn't want. They wanted a dynamic arm that could go downfield accurately.
Yeah. With
zip. Jared Goff does none of those things. He's not accurate downfield. He's not downfield hardly at all with any accuracy. And there's no zip on the ball, which is why there's so many tight throws and near incompletions or dropped passes and pass defenses and all that kind of stuff. You just can't get the ball there quick enough. So yeah, I would agree. I think that he needs to no incompletion, no incompletions, no turnovers, manage the game well, complete passes on third down. Like we have to drive the field to do that kind of stuff without screwing up and costing us games. That keeps him around another year for me. If he can't do this, Hooker goes in.
I think you would have a QB competition in the preseason next year.
Yeah,
which he would almost. I think he would almost assuredly win. Goff would win that. But, so Joey says tackle someone in a league where any hit is a potential flag. Interesting strategy. That's true. I was thinking about this the other day. Whether it's baseball, hockey, or the NBA. The NFL has the same thing going on where they are legislating defense out of the league. So, yeah, that's a problem. But also, if you watch Brian Branch tackle, it's the definition of what they teach you to tackle starting in like Pop Warner.
Yeah.
Like you can do that. Not every hit has to be like a lower your shoulder into the dude's body. I mean, like I've always was taught like hug him to the ground. Fine with me. Let's go hug the shit out of him. But like, I don't see the Lions doing that. What I see is, like, I think Aiden was the best example of this because he had just such a terrible game this last week. But like, the Bears running back got the ball, and Aiden tried to go get him high, and the dude just ducked right under. Whoops-a-daisy! Now it's instead of a tackle for loss, it's a 3 or 4 yard gain. Like, in those kinds of things, they can't do. Like the Lions this last week were just the team that made the most mistakes. And it didn't matter whether it was on offense, defense, special teams, mindset. They made more mistakes, and the Bears made them pay for it. So congrats to the Bears. We split with you this season. I think the Lions are the better team. And but I was messing around with some what if the Bears do believe in Justin Fields and decide to trade the number 1 overall pick from Carolina again? They're set at, they could be looking at something like 3 years of multiple draft picks. That's really more like you're getting 4 or 5 years worth of draft picks in a 3-year window. And then all of a sudden that team looks a lot different, and they could catch right up. So it's not good. Let's see. Yeah, so Hatters makes a good point here with about Jared Goff's money, the next one down. And the best asset that any NFL team can possibly have is a rookie quarterback on a rookie deal, or a young quarterback on a rookie deal. And Goff is not currently on that one. He's like the 11th or 12th highest paid, maybe even worse now, but quarterback in the NFL. He's making 31, I think, this year. And my issue is and I think Hatters is right on the nose with this, is that say you extend him 3 years. Well, at the end of next season, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Penei Sewell are going to get their money. Aleem McNeil, Derek Barnes might be in line for second contracts. And then the year after that, it's Aiden and Jamo. So you have a bunch of contract extensions coming up. So if you don't either move to a rookie contract now or do it in the year that the Penei Sewell money kicks in, all of this contract flexibility is going to evaporate. And the Lions are already to the point where they use their salary cap in season just to elevate players from the practice squad.
Yeah.
It's not to make in-season trades. It's not to extend people during the season. They don't do that. But they burn up their cap space every year just elevating people from the practice squad because of injuries. So,
well, they're not the only ones, right? Everybody has injuries and it does the same thing, but that's why you need that extra cap room.
Right. And so the difference between paying your quarterback something like Hendon Hooker is a 3rd round pick. You're going to be paying him $1 million as opposed to $31 million. And so that's and I think this Hatter's point as well is the drop off from Jared Goff to Hendon Hooker $30 million a year?
No chance.
I don't know. I mean, if he looks like Zach Wilson, maybe.
Yeah, but is Zach Wilson 1/30th as good as Jared Goff right now? I still think he's better than 1/30th. That's 3.33% of what Jared Goff is, and I think he's more than that, right? But I still don't want that.
Right.
There is a level that you have to meet, regardless.
Like what Brad Holmes said is, it's easy to get worse at quarterback, right? So I just wonder how deeply they believe in that type of statement, because I'm starting to wonder if Brad Holmes is unwilling to take risks when it comes to the roster. And I don't think anybody ever built a Super Bowl winner by just being safe about it.
Right.
So maybe he doesn't need to take risks in the first whatever, or maybe he's just trying to get to a contract extension, which he's in line for. I mean, you can't deny. Well, I mean, that's just it, right? I mean, look how bad the defense is. But I need to go get my notebook because we're going to talk about what we're going to do with the defense. So I'm just going to hop out real quick. I'll be gone for a minute, okay?
I suppose that's okay. I'm gonna pop Joey the bone saws comment up here. I I think we've been overperforming. We are year 3 in the rebuild and haven't really gone all in. We're several pieces away. Um, I totally agree with that. I think we have been overperforming. One of the things that I think is underappreciated about um, our record this year is the fact that we've beaten, for the most part, bad teams. The exception is Kansas City, but they did have no Kelsey. They had no Chris Jones. They did have Patrick Mahomes, and that many times that's all you really need. But like we beat a bunch of bad teams. Every time we went up against a good team, Baltimore, for example, we got our asses handed to us. And so, like to me, we were getting our record was getting propped up by beating up on poor teams, and I just don't think we're quite as good as what our record indicates.
Let me push
But
back real quick.
okay,
Let's talk. Who are the good teams in the NFC? Dallas, San Francisco, Philadelphia, us. Who else? Who else is a good team that doesn't fit the definition of what you just said?
I might put the Seahawks in there.
Okay.
They are essentially a 500 team, though, right? So that's
Right.
not a great team by any means.
So who are they
Tampa
supposed to
Bay,
play? They play Tampa Bay and they beat them. So who falls into the good team the Lions could play out that gets them outside the definition of we just played bad teams?
we just beat bad teams. So like Seattle, we lost to Seattle. They were a decent team. We beat Atlanta. They're not very good. We beat Green Bay. I guess they're okay. They've started playing better lately.
I
We
mean, but
beat
every
Carolina, who's terrible.
every team in the NFC South is 6-7 except the Panthers.
Yeah. Who
So,
we
I
beat.
mean-
So that was cool.
I mean, there's
we
just
their
not
one
good
win.
teams out there to play.
Yeah. But every time we did, Baltimore, Seattle, like I will say the one team that I thought was good that I didn't expect us to beat was LA. I thought the Chargers were going to beat us. I just thought they were a better team. But yeah, we have an easy schedule, and that doesn't matter if it's easy or not. If that gets you in the playoffs, that gets you in the playoffs.
Right, exactly. So instead of just harping on how bad the Lions are, I think what we should do is we should look at what the situation is and how it can be addressed moving forward. Okay. So the way that I always approach that is, what does the roster look like now? What's a realistic expectation for an improvement in the roster? Let's say March or something of this upcoming year, 2024. So I'm just going to read off. This is going to take a second. I'm just going to read off the dudes on the roster whose contracts are up on the end of the year. So, a Thursday they're on the team. Friday their contracts run out. They're off. Romeo Okwara, Charles Harris, Josh Reynolds, Jonah Jackson, Graham Glasgow, Teddy Bridgewater, Jalen Reeves-Maybin, we mentioned him, Julian Okwara, Donovan People-Jones, Will Harris, Jerry Jacobs, Craig Reynolds, Anthony Pittman, Benito Jones, Brock Wright, Riley Patterson, Chase Lucas, Khalil Dorsey, Awosika. Is it Khalil Awosika? Dan Skipper,
Yeah.
Jack McQuaid, Kilden Vildor, whatever his name is.
Yeah, he was the guy that we brought up to replace Jerry Jacobs and played pretty well.
Yeah. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, James Houston. 25 guys that are 24 guys that are off the roster because their contracts are up. Okay. Now we're still going to pay for some of them because of void years on their deals. So what I looked at and I said, well, where are we losing the most people? Like, what are the areas of concern? Well, areas of concern right now, I think, are the defensive line and the secondary.
As an FYI, next year we just have one player with dead cap money on our roster right now.
Sure. So
Marvin
hopefully
Jones,
we'll be out from under
800K.
the dead cap. I'm sure we'll find guys to
Yeah.
put on there.
Yeah.
We are losing 4 edge rushers, pass rushers, 4 corners, 2 wide receivers, and 2 offensive linemen. Those are the big losses as far as I'm concerned. So what do they do? So like I kind of sketched out the guys that were or are remaining on the roster in these different groups. There he is. There's Donkey Kong. So let's just take a look at the defensive line next year. Okay. You've got Hutch, you've got McNeil, and then at the other inside defensive tackle spot, you have 4 guys. Bugs, Onwuzurike, Broderick Martin, and John Comiskey. They're all on the roster. That's 4
really
dudes
cheap.
deep. What?
And they're cheap because Bugs is only 2.8 million next year. Broderick Martin is 1.2 million next year. Onwuzurike is 2.6 million next year. And who was the other one? Ali McNeil.
Yeah, McNeil's he's
1.6 million.
Yeah.
That's an inexpensive group there.
Right.
Which is nice.
No edges to play across from Aiden. None. So that tells me they're either going to bring back somebody like Romeo Okwara, who's probably the best out of that group, or you give somebody like James Houston a chance to be a starter. So I don't know what they do there, but like I think that going into the draft, edge has got to be your first or second priority. And it's not based upon where they're drafting in each round. It's a terrible draft for edges. You need to be
not just
top
that,
15.
But corners too, right? We're losing.
Oh, that's where we're going.
Corners.
That's where we're going, baby.
Yeah.
Because it's a great draft for corners.
Yeah.
In my mocks, if I do like a 6 or 7 round mock, I draft 3 or 4 corners.
I'll be curious to see what, like, if Emmanuel Mosley comes back from injury, whether we would bring him back. You think that's a career ender?
I don't think that you can re-sign a dude that's had 2 ACLs in a row with any kind of confidence that he's going to play for you.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the secondary.
League minimum with a performance bonus kind of thing. Like you got to play games, you got to do something.
Right.
The old Ricky Waters type of contracts.
So let's talk about what the secondary looks like next year. Here are the guys that are locked in contract-wise. Tracy Walker, Kirby Joseph, Cam Sutton, Brian Branch. Those are we're on the roster unless someone gets cut. Oh, Latu from UCLA would be amazing, but they're not going to pick at 7, so you're not going to there's no way that they're going to they have to trade up 20 spots to draft that dude. He would be great. Like he's exactly the kind of guy I want across from Aiden, but like there's no chance.
So 20 spots, so drafting 27th. That's
I think that's where we're slotted after this week. If the draft were today, I think they pick 27.
Yeah, that's assuming that we're going to win playoff games then.
Well, it assumes we make it does assume we win playoff games. So let me ask you this question.
Yeah.
We re-sign Chauncey Gardner-Johnson?
Mm-hmm.
I would.
Yeah.
So then your secondary, if you designate Tracy Walker a post-June 1 cut, which you can do with 2 guys, you can save $8 million. And I just don't know.
We want to do that though, right?
Well, I mean, like,
so we got Kirby Joseph, who's taken a little bit of a step back this year, which is kind of that sophomore slump type of thing. That's not uncommon. And we would have Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. Depth is good.
I mean, depth is good. I don't want to pay like $11 million for depth.
I don't think you are. I think Kirby's your depth.
You can't. Kirby does something different than what Tracy Walker and Chauncey Gardner-Johnson do. You can't not have him out there.
Yeah, that's true.
He's your no one throws over the
Ball
top of
hawk
us ball
hitter.
hawk. He's one of the only guys on the team that generates turnovers.
Yeah, that's fair.
Well, okay. So, like, here's Don's question. Don says, "Is the Bears rebuild ahead of ours now? The first overall pick, maybe fifth overall. Tons of cap space with young talent on the team already." So, like, the reason why it certainly looks that way, and it's because the Bears have a ton of cap space. That's the lesser of the two important things. They have a ton of picks, and they have a ton of picks high, and they have a ton of picks and flexibility to go get more picks. So if you believe in Justin Fields, you can trade the number one pick. So I looked at what their pick was with Carolina, and I did a little like what if trade with the Giants, who are currently sitting at like the seventh overall pick. So if the Giants wanted to trade from 7-1 to go get Caleb Williams, who said that he would want to play in New York, my trade was the Bears get the seventh overall pick in this year's draft. They get a second round pick, which was like 41 or something in this year's draft. They get a second round pick in next year's draft. They get a third round pick in the draft after that, so 2 years out, and they get Saquon Barkley. That is roughly akin to what they got from the Panthers. So then this year, I had the Bears then drafting Joe Alt from Notre Dame as a left tackle and Malik Neighbors as their number 2 wide receiver. So then going into next season, the Bears offense looks like Joe Alt and Darnell Wright as your tackles on rookie deals. You still have Justin Fields on a rookie deal. Now he's got Saquon Barkley in the backfield with him, and he's got DJ Moore and Malik Neighbors as his wide receivers. That would be an elite offense. And not to mention Cole Kmet as your tight end. So, like, the amount of draft capital the Bears could potentially generate is, I think, making up the ground real quickly on the Detroit Lions. Hated Chitkago guy ever. So the talent that he has stacked has come from trades, not the draft. Darnell Wright looks like a decent tackle. And some of their, like, what's their safety's name? Brisker from Penn State. Like, he looks like a quality safety, right? But he traded up for Fields.
It doesn't matter how he
it doesn't.
Stacks of talent, right? So we talked about that. It doesn't matter if it's a draft, a trade, or a free agency. It's all about talent accumulation and putting the best team on the field.
So I want to push back on something that Steve-O just said here. Brad Holmes and his staff are going to have to do some good work outside of the first round. I'm going to challenge that. They need to do good work in the first round. Go back and look at their first round picks. They're not all hits. Penny's a good player. Aiden's a good player. JMO's still not being utilized.
Yeah, that was the year that was like WTF.
Right. Gibbs. I mean, I like Gibbs fine. But, like, he is not used as an offensive weapon. Like, he had some fuck ups in this game that were costly. And, like, Jack Campbell has been a dude. So, like, I would argue they're 50-50 on first round picks.
Jack Campbell's been barely a dude.
Right. I mean, he's a human being that breathes. But, I mean, like...
Yes.
But, like, the thing that I have always had a problem with is that, like, are you adding elite talent to a roster? And I think that Brad has done a good job of, like, adding players who are better than their draft position, but I don't think they're elite. I don't think they're elite players.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's a lot of I've seen a lot of hate on Brad Holmes lately online and about his picks aren't good. I'm like, well, I mean, he's hit on more than most GMs do. Like, Hutchinson was a good pick. Sewell's a great pick.
Yep.
Amon-Ra St. Brown was an amazing pick. Aleem McNeil is good. Rodrigo had a good year, and I think he's a really solid for where he was drafted. He had a great rookie year, and he was he's a solid special teamer and a pretty damn decent fullback. But like he was a good pick. Kirby Joseph has been a good pick. Like there's a lot of good picks where, like you said, they're playing better than their draft position. They may not be all pros.
Right.
Or some of them have made the Pro Bowl, but like they may not be top 5 at their position, but they're playing better than their draft pick, and that is exactly what we need out of our GM is to draft people that are better than the position that they drafted them in. And
So
we need to that
yeah, so
continue. We need to continue that.
exactly. So like one thing that the Bears have done that I don't think the Lions have done that's helped them is they've made moves at the trade deadline. So like they gave up a second round pick because they're flush. They are flush with draft capital coming off that pick trading the number 1 overall pick. And if they trade the number 1 pick this year, or if they keep the number 1 pick and then trade Fields, you're going to get more picks there. So I don't mind giving up a second round pick for Montez Sweat, who, by the way, looks great and has had 3.5 sacks since he's gotten traded to the Bears. So like the dude is producing and was a problem for both Penei Sewell and Decker, who is starting to look real bad, by the way. Like he's either hurt and has been covering it up for some part of the season or whatever.
Practice
but like,
today with back.
Yeah.
He was out of practice today with back.
That's not great.
No.
That's not
I am
great.
going to push back a little bit on Don Burr here because I saw this. Jack Campbell finally had a good game after a dozen of them that were just, why is he even on the roster, kind of bad. And I've seen the same comment. He's finally in his natural position, and that's why he was so bad. He's not an edge rusher. Out of the 477 snaps that he's taken, only 62 of them have been pass rushes. He's not been used as an edge. So the whole idea of he was out of position and they were using him as an edge rusher, that's literally not the way that it's happened. It is about like 11% of his snaps or whatever have been pass rush things. Everything else has been in coverage and run defense, which is exactly what his natural position is. So I don't care if people are like, oh, he was out of position. I disagree. Like the numbers say that is not correct.
So I guess what I would agree with on Don is that I don't think that Campbell is lining up every week where he lined up at Iowa and being asked to do what he did at Iowa, which was to play a traditional Mike linebacker role. He's playing strong side or off linebacker next to Anzalone, who is doing the Mike role, the primary defensive play caller. That makes sense.
He had one game where he was used as a pass rusher, but other than that, there's 3 out of 23, 2 out of 29. Like he's barely being used as a pass rusher.
So I don't care about him rushing the passer. I just don't care. He's going to get some amount of pass rushes just because he's a linebacker, and you're going to send him on a blitz every once in a while. What I care about is run defense and coverage ability, and he is not there yet. And maybe it's just, you are a level removed from where the quarterback is as far as the defense is concerned, and it takes you a while to adjust. There's every possibility that Jack Campbell might be a top 10 linebacker in the NFL next season. That's a possibility. The issue is he's not that right now.
Yeah.
So, and what we care about is right now. Now, maybe Brad Holmes has got this idea that, like, I'm going to take Campbell, we're going to put him in the oven, let him bake for this season,
learn behind Anzalone.
Yeah, basically. And like eventually, like, Anzalone's contract runs out, Campbell's going to slide into that role, and like you have to start that process at certain position groups at some point. Why not do it right now? My issue with Jack Campbell is, I guess, the hype surrounding him and where he was picked, and the fact that, like, I wanted, like, there were two things that I wanted. If you didn't make a trade down, I wanted Jalen Carter at 6, and I would have taken Branch at 18. Those were my mock drafts heading up to the draft last year. Once they made the trade, I wanted to take Christian Gonzalez at 12, and I wanted to take Brian Branch at 18 and infuse these groups with more. But they didn't do that because they had Emmanuel Mosley that they thought were going to come back and lock down that spot. So, I mean, you understand why they didn't. Right. But so what is to Mike, if you had to say the number one problem with this defense right now, all season, the last month, whatever, that this is the thing that they have to fix to take this defense from where it is to a level above as far as this play. What is the singular issue in your mind?
Pass rush.
Right.
Pressure on the quarterback. Like, not just pressure on the quarterback, actually getting there. Like, it's important. My brother and I had this conversation about, like, pressure versus sacks and how disappointing Aiden was this year. And I'm like, well, I mean, he's already got like 50% more pressures. He's got like 50 more pressures than all of last year combined, and we're only week 14. And I'm like, pressures are also important because they do disrupt the play. I would probably rather have 50 pressures and disrupting 50 plays in some manner than an additional 4 sacks. Like 50 plays versus 4 plays. Yeah, those sacks could be fumbles, and they could, they could be on third down or whatever and cause a, turnover on downs or force them to punt. But like, I'd still rather have a higher percentage of like disrupted plays. And that's where I think if we can get a running buddy for Hutch on the other side, if Houston comes back healthy, if Pascal starts picking things up a little bit, if we draft a guy, right? Like, I was a little bummed to see Chase Young go for such a cheap price and us not being on that entire deal. Like, I'd have given up that third rounder.
So I get the thing for me when it comes to like the trading aspect of it is that so many of these quality players have gone for relatively nothing. And, well, not nothing.
Because they're rental, right? Because you're not guaranteed to re-sign them and all that kind of thing.
So, Chase Young has not been great since he's been on the San Francisco 49ers. But, like, he's been a guy. He had this last week, he had a really good game. But, like, I have watched, as I'm sure everybody that's in the chat has watched, I'm sure that as you have watched, I have watched every game that Aiden Hutchinson has played for the Lions. Here's what I have constantly seen. He is double teamed constantly. The plays are run away from him constantly. And he is almost getting there anyways. Now, so much like Frank Ragnow going out this week hurt 2 positions, right? You had to move Glasgow to center. You had to bring Awosika or somebody else in to play right guard, right? So if one guy goes down, affects 2 positions. If Aiden has a running buddy that's halfway decent, and like I think we saw this with Houston briefly last season, if there's another dude on the other side that can generate pressure, I think the whole house of cards comes down, right? And now it's like, now we have it. Oh, stop it on Thibodeau. Like, I'm just never gonna like that guy irrationally. Like, even if he's been playing better. I'll give you that, Don. Okay, I'll give you that.
I will. I'm gonna agree with Don here. We can't judge Jack fairly until further notice.
Yeah,
further notice to me is until year 3, right?
That's year 3.
Yeah. So and I say that for every draft pick. That said, if we were expecting a first round draft pick to help us out this year, he's not that guy.
Right.
And I don't care if people think that he's not in his natural position. If he can only play one position, he's absolutely fucking terrible at all the other uh, uh, sister positions, the ones that are just like it but not quite exactly. Then he's not as good of an athlete as everybody thinks. And I don't think that's the case. Like I think he's a good athlete, but I don't think at 18 you take a guy that's going to do this. Hopefully he turns into something bigger and better, and we can. He's the succession plan from Angeloni, that kind of thing. So as a Lions fan, I hope it works out. I always hope it works out. Still disappointed that we took him over a cornerback or a defensive tackle, because there were some there.
Yeah, like the guy that I think was still on the board that I probably would have taken was Joey Porter. Maybe
Yeah.
Deion Banks, who's in New York now. But like, so I was talking to one of the guys from the Roar the Lions UK, Matt, and we were having a conversation about like he's firmly in the camp of you just draft for the future. Like you draft, you develop, and you just build like that, build like that, build like that, and just have it be consistent. And I'm like, I used to think that way. I used to feel that. That made a lot of sense to me. But I just don't think that the NFL exists outside of a longer than 1 year period anymore.
1 year's tight, right? I think there's that 2 to 3 year window that you're trying to maximize, right? That especially since we're talking about rookie contracts and how important that is.
Sure.
So it doesn't have to be rookie year, but inside that rookie contract is really important window to hit on your picks.
You know, and Brad has hit on more than he should have hit on. That's not up for debate. Like he has added talent to the roster at every level of the draft. I hope he continues to do that. Here's my problem is that the Lions have a window right now. You never know when your next window is going to be. So it is possible. There is in the multiverse of football, there is a universe out there, maybe lots of them, where Jared Goff goes on a streak and plays well enough to win 4 games in a row against the best competition in the NFC. And then you don't know. Then you're just in the game and you have a chance to win it because you're the one playing there. That's a possibility. Like he's shown me at least that. I just don't believe that he can do it consistently. So like I am of the opinion that if you are like, hey, you're in a window and you're not doing literally everything you can to make that window a reality, you might as well be saying like, well, our next window may not come around for 5 years because you don't know who's going to get hurt. You don't know who's going to demand a trade. You don't know what the draft classes are going to look like or who's going to want to come to your team or anything really. You just have educated guesses. And so, sometimes those work out, but a lot of times they don't. Like there's a lot about the NFL that is exceptionally complex. The Lions heading into this year possibly being like one of the 4 best teams in the NFC. Even if you're in it and you have to like reassess like through week 6 or something, and you say like, hey, let's go out and make a trade. You don't have to do a blockbuster deal, but let's go get like a solid corner that you can put across from Cam Sutton.
Kind of like how we got Cam Sutton.
Yeah.
And he hasn't played as well as we expect, but he's also literally the only cornerback on the team that's worth a damn. I mean, like Jerry Jacobs has played poorly. Mosley got hurt, right? So like the people that he was supposed to be on the field with are not there, right? But like Jerry Jacobs has been playing terrible. Will Harris is still
he is so
Will
bad.
Harris. So like he's not getting a lot of help, and I think he presses things a little bit because of that. But I do want to kind of talk about Steve O's question. What's the odds Hooker gets a chance to compete for the starting job next season?
0.
You don't think he's going to be able to
0% chance. Here's what's going to happen. I would bet my house on it. Teddy Bridgewater is going to head off into free agency, and Hendon Hooker is going to take his spot, and we're all done.
for the next year.
You're not. There's no way. What does Goff make next year? 31 million.
33.5, I think.
Okay. You're not playing him. You're not gonna keep him on the roster and play your effectively rookie quarterback over him. None. Here's what I think would happen. Hendon will be healthy. He had a full practice today. So I think that he will be healthy heading into the offseason. You'll get your workouts in, you'll do your studying, learn the book, develop rhythm with the players, that kind of stuff. And then you're going to go in and you're going to get more throws, A, because you're healthy, B, because there's no one in front of you other than Jared Goff. So you're going to get whatever throws in practice he doesn't make. And you're probably going to play the majority of the preseason games. But he's not, unless he is perfect.
Or if Goff gets injured.
So if Goff gets injured, that's why he's on the roster. But that's not him getting a chance. That's fate knocking the dude in front of him out of the way.
Yeah.
I don't think there's any reality.
Tom Brady, right?
Right, exactly. It's Tom Brady and Drew Bledsoe all over again, right? So that would be wonderful. But
only if we end up with the 7 rings.
So I said this at the end of the first season when the Lions got their 3 wins and their tie or whatever, and it's what Steve-O just said. Goff could have decent trade value. Yes, he could, and this is what happens. It's the opposite of the way that people should think. It's like when you buy stocks, what are you supposed to do, Mike?
Make money, sell them high. Buy low, sell high.
Buy low, sell high, right? So when Jared Goff is playing well, say the first half of this season, and it's all the touchdowns, none of the picks, you're 8-2, all that shit, right? No one wants to sell.
Yeah.
Because life is good. Why move away from this?
It's going up.
Right. And let some other schmuck out there buy high. So I agree with Steve-O.
Like Kyler Murray.
He could have, yeah, exactly. Like he could have decent trade value. Like in decent trade value for a quarterback, I think like Jared Goff is like a 1 and a 3, couple of 2s, something like that. But and that would help because his contract moves away, you get more draft capital, yada yada. But and I think the Dr. Detroit makes a point here. He's too limited, and he is limited athletically, and his arm talent is limited. He is an example of the type of quarterback the NFL used to thrive with. And used to might have been 3 years ago. So it's not that far away. But it's not what elite quarterbacks are in the NFL right now. And if you're not doing what's going on in the NFL right now, you're behind.
Yeah, and I'll agree with Don Burr on this one as well. I think a lot of it might depend on how the season ends with Goff. If he keeps going the last 4 games like he's done the previous 4 games, or I should say the next 4 games like he's done the last 4 games,
right?
With 9 turnovers, losses to teams that we shouldn't lose to, and if we miss the playoffs, if we don't win the division, if we don't win a game in the playoffs, it's just a miserable thing. I think there's a very real chance that Hooker has a preseason fight on his hands.
No, there's no chance. Let's say that happens. I'll give you this.
All right, so let's say the last 4 games we go 1-3, right?
Sure.
We lose this weekend against Denver. We split against Minnesota, and then we lose to the Cowboys.
Sure.
We squeak into the playoffs, possibly not even winning the division if Minnesota gets there. And the whole scenario it's because of Goff's turnovers, whether it's fumbles, interceptions, whatever, right?
Right. The trend continues.
We lose a playoff game.
Yep.
That's the guy that spent the last 8 games of his season with 17, 18 turnovers and a 3-6 record. That's the guy that we're yep. I just don't think it's there.
So here's the thing. If Ben Johnson leaves and that happened with Jared Goff, you just have to get rid of Goff. you can't keep him on the roster.
Yeah.
Like you either look for a trade, you try and save money on the cut,
You're saying that there's not going to be a fight. He's either traded and gone, and Hooker's our guy,
or you've recommitted to him.
Yeah.
Yeah. So to me, there's no chance that like it's the fighting Goffs versus the fighting Hookers for the the Detroit Lions starting quarterback position. What will they do in the preseason? Let's find out tonight. Like that type of narrative, I just do not believe has any chance of realistically happening, because
that's reasonable.
You don't go to sea on a ship with two captains. No one talks about what the popes are doing in Rome. No one looks to see how many presidents are in the White House. There's one of those things.
Yeah.
There's one of each of those things.
You've got your leader, and then you've got assistants.
If you have two quarterbacks, right? If you have two starting quarterbacks on the roster, you have one too many. That's why all this narrative about the Bears staying at one, drafting Caleb Williams, and then having like a QB competition between Fields and Williams is nonsense. It is nonsense. You will never see that. That would be the most mismanaged roster on there, and it would be a nuclear bomb of drama. You can't do that. You commit to one dude, and you put your hopes on his coattails.
Yep.
So which one do you think the Lions are going to go with? And like, I just think that what Brad said about it's easy to get worse at quarterback. I think he means that. I think he means it inside him. Like he feels that statement.
And it's true. It's easier to get worse than better.
And like for all the badness that we have seen and talked about Jared Goff, there's another 16 quarterbacks out there that are worse than he is. I mean, we just had Tommy DeVito versus Jordan Love. And Tommy DeVito won.
Came back and won. Yeah.
Tommy won.
Really well.
Cutlet won. So, I mean, like, that's the state of the NFL is you get to this point in the year, 2/3 of the way through the season, and the Tommy DeVitos of the world are out here slinging the rock. So like, I don't know that you need... I don't know that you need Teddy Bridgewater.
Yeah, no, I don't think so either. He was just a stopgap until Hooker got healthy. But Don Burr says, his limitations, his being Goff, keep Ben Johnson's playbook cut in half. Wholeheartedly agree. I think that's why Jameson Williams looks like a bust right now, is because he's not capable of fitting into an offense that this quarterback has to run. So at what point does Dan Campbell, Ben Johnson, and Brad Holmes recognize this? Or do they have this confirmation bias of, we got this guy as part of this trade package, he's X number of dollars, and they're like, this is their guy?
Well, there's simply no way they're not aware of it. There's no way. They are aware of that stuff and made the commitment to him anyways. So
they haven't committed to anything because they haven't re-signed him or
as the guy that they're going to go with, or whatever, right? Like they could
verbally.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like as far as like the playbook being cut in half and that kind of stuff, like they made, they're like, well, we're just going to do that with Jared Goff. Like we're just cut the playbook in half because we know who he is. Like there's no chance that they don't know exactly who Jared Goff is. The playbook that they're running is designed to make him the best quarterback that he can be.
Right.
So like Jared Goff, my issues with Jared Goff have been well documented. So like when he's not going to be the quarterback of the Detroit Lions forever. I know that. So when and what does it look like? But like I also think that Dan Campbell, Brad Holmes are willing to bet on Jared Goff as opposed to, well, let's sign Tyrod Taylor. Let's sign Gardner Minshew and see what this roster looks like. So my big fear is that they're gonna extend him.
Yeah.
I mean, like, I don't see how he doesn't get 45 to 50 a year. I just don't. I mean, you can't.
That's terrifying.
If you're his agent and you're like, the Giants just gave Danny 40 a year. He's making
like throw.
You're making above 30 right now. You're not going to give me more than Danny Dimes makes.
Yeah.
But like, and for all the trade talk that's being discussed in the chat right now, like, name me an NFL team that'll give up 2 second-round picks for Jared Goff and then pay him what we don't want to. Does anybody think there's an NFL team out there that's like, we are a Jared Goff away?
What about like a New Orleans or in Atlanta? If Atlanta's not sold on Desmond Ridder.
So Atlanta doesn't.
They're not just a Jared Goff away either, right? They're more than a Jared Goff away.
Indianapolis has Anthony Richardson.
Yeah, they've got their guy.
He's hurt, but
the Jets. If
Aaron Rodgers.
If Aaron Rodgers retires or can't come back.
Aaron Rodgers can't retire. His narcissism won't allow him to do that.
That's fair. Washington.
Okay. Washington.
But these are like Washington, New England, even like Las Vegas. They're toward the top of the draft as well. So like those are also the teams that are going to be going, hey, Drake May, thank you, right?
He doesn't do what San Fran wants.
Thank you.
He can't.
So
he cannot do what San Francisco wants them to do. If you look at what San Francisco wants them to do, like the NFL quarterback that is perfect for San Francisco is Kirk Cousins. And Kirk Cousins is Jared Goff with a better arm and a little bit more mobility. But like there's no way that I would trade for Jared Goff if I had Brock Purdy on my roster doing what Brock Purdy has done.
Yeah. Not that Purdy's like an elite talent.
No.
But it fits just like Goff with our offense. It fits his skill set really well.
I would say Washington is a possibility. I would say New England is a possibility, depending on if Bill Belichick is the coach of that team next year. If Bill Belichick is not the coach of that team next year, there's no way that Goff gets traded to New England.
Yeah, I agree. And they're sitting at the second pick right now, which means either Williams
that's Drake May.
or May. Right?
If you don't take Drake May sitting at 2, you should be, well, thanks for playing, but you're fired. You're fucking fired. Like, it's just ridiculous. Like, it's just crazy. Yeah. I mean, like, I hate it when good quarterbacks get stranded on bad rosters. That's why I feel so bad for Justin Herbert right now, because they're not doing it. They're not supporting him the way they need to in order to be successful. And but even New England is not Jared Goff away.
No.
Like, if there's anything a Lions fan has learned about Jared Goff, the roster around him needs to be pretty good. And like, let's be real. The offense is light years ahead of the defense. The offensive line had been set. They added Penei Sewell to that. Now there's a little cherry on top. Let's not forget, like, the running backs that we had last year were good.
Yep.
And we can debate how good, but they were good. And then you had Amon-Ra St. Brown and Sam Laporta. You want to talk about guys like special offensive weapon Jahmyr Gibbs and Jamison Williams getting the ball more. You can't throw to Laporta and St. Brown 10 times a piece a game. There's just you're not going to run 40 to 50% of the time, throw to those guys 20 times a game, and then have enough snaps for JMO. You just don't. There aren't enough snaps. You don't have enough snaps in the game. Yeah, so Brad does love to trade within division. He's traded with the Vikings 2 or 3 times. I don't think that he's made a move with the Bears. Brad is going to call the Bears about Fields. I would totally hate that move.
Audio just went up. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, my audio just went out.
That's fine. This happens to him all the time. It's way too complicated.
Difficulties on my side. We'll see what we can do.
Like he said with Dave Montgomery, he got tired of dealing with him. Got tired of dealing with who? I don't know who Don's referencing right there. But like, excellent. Sure. I don't mind. So, like when Kyler Murray wiped his Instagram account from Cardinal stuff late last year, I thought maybe we should trade for Kyler Murray. Not because Kyler Murray is such a great quarterback, but because he's such an upgrade over what Jared Goff is. And if you put him in an offense with David Montgomery, Sam Laporta, Amon-Ra St. Brown, and Kyler is a quarterback that can flick it 50 on his wrist. So if you want someone that's going to take advantage of JMO and what JMO can do, you have to move on from Jared Goff. Like, whether it was the Thanksgiving Day game last year against the Bills, where Jared couldn't get the ball to DJ Chark to set up a touchdown, or it was this last week where JMO's running, got a step on a dude, and he just can't get the ball there. Like, you cannot. I don't understand why you go and you draft Jameson Williams when Jared Goff is your quarterback. You're using him wrong, and therefore you're not throwing him the ball. Yeah. Like, if I was JMO, I'd be getting frustrated. Oh, that's right. He did make a move he did trade up with the Packers for Brandt. That's a good one, Don. Good memory, buddy. All right, Mike, you had something you wanted to do?
Yeah, so I was thinking, do we want to do a playoff simulation? Basically, take a look at the last 4 weeks, see who we think might hit these, hit the victories, and then see where we end up. Right now, are San Francisco's got the first seed right now.
Can you make it bigger?
I can make it bigger.
Thank you.
Yes. All right. So week 15, we'll only do the NFC teams because those are the only ones that matter. Sure. Atlanta, probably going to beat Carolina, correct?
I can't imagine Carolina wins anything at this point.
Right. All right. So we've got Atlanta there. Minnesota over
Cincinnati. I still think Cincinnati is better than Minnesota. Like, they are starting Nick Mullins for that game. They have benched Dobbs, and Browning is playing like an absolute starter. So I'm going to give that one to Cincinnati.
Okay. And the other question for this, is this what we think is going to happen, or are we looking at like a worst case scenario for the Lions?
No, this is what I think is going to happen.
Okay. So we'll go Cincy there. Chicago v. Cleveland.
I think Cleveland wins that game. Is it in Cleveland?
Yes. Chicago at Cleveland.
Yeah. Cleveland's defense is just too good.
Detroit hosting the Broncos.
I picked them to win this game 2 weeks ago. I don't think anything's changed. I'm still going to say they win.
All right. Niners over the Cards.
Niners.
Washington versus LA.
LA.
In LA, yeah. LA's played really well the last couple of games.
Yeah, they took Baltimore to overtime. I was surprised.
And to be honest, I thought they outplayed them. I think they played well enough to win. Had a few self-inflicted wounds, dropped passes, those kinds of things.
Yeah.
Dallas versus Buffalo in Buffalo.
Dallas is playing better than any team in the NFL right now.
Tampa Bay versus Green Bay in Green Bay.
I'm going to give that to Green Bay.
We don't care about that one. New York versus the Saints.
I'll bet on the Giants. I think the Giants. Maybe they have a little momentum on their side right now.
Eagles, Seahawks in Seattle.
I'm going to pick the Eagles.
All right. So we are still third seed at this point, playing Minnesota. That would be a great matchup. Just end the season right here.
Yeah, you either want to play the NFC South or the worst team in the NFC North, right? So,
all right. So next week we've got in the LA. I think the Rams are probably going to beat them again. Detroit in Minnesota.
Detroit.
Don't care about that. Jacksonville versus Tampa Bay.
Jacksonville.
Arizona in Chicago.
I really want to say Arizona.
It's going to be Chicago, right?
Fine.
In Chicago, they just
I think
if they can beat us, they can beat Arizona, right?
Sure. All right. Whatever.
That could
be
Miami.
An absolute banger.
Yeah.
I think that Dallas's defense is better, and I think their offense is playing as well. So I'm going to say Dallas.
Yeah, and Miami just lost a squeaker. That was a great ending, by the way. If anybody didn't watch it. Washington versus the Jets.
I'm going to give that to Washington.
Those are AFC. We don't care. Seattle versus Tennessee.
I'll say Tennessee. It's a big win.
Don't care there. Indy in Atlanta.
I'll say Indy.
Giants in Philly.
Philly. Green Bay.
This is going to be a great game as well.
Yeah, I'll say San Francisco.
Honestly, this is potentially a Super Bowl matchup.
Potentially, yeah. It's the AFC playoff picture right now is literally insane.
So San Francisco, LA jumped into the 7th seed at that point.
Oh my God!
Playing Green Bay. All right, so week 17. Don't care. LA versus New York.
LA.
Detroit in Dallas, where Dallas is beating their opponents at home by 31.5 points a game.
I'll say Dallas.
Arizona in Philly.
Philly.
Don't care. New Orleans in Tampa Bay.
Tampa Bay.
Don't care. San Francisco in Washington.
San Francisco.
Atlanta in Chicago.
I think Atlanta. I think if there's a team, or if there's a bad team that's set up to beat the Bears, it's a team that loves to play defense and run the ball, and that's the Falcons. So, like, I'm just going to say Atlanta.
Playoff seeding, right?
Right. They have a lot to play for.
Pittsburgh in Seattle.
So Kenny Pickett should be back for this game. So I'm going to say the Steelers.
All right.
Never thought I'd say that.
Don't care. All right. Don't care there.
Jacksonville.
Carolina versus Jacksonville. Don't care here.
Don't care.
Oh, and then this is actually going to be an important one for our division.
I'm going to say the Packers.
So, Green Bay, so on the road in Minnesota.
I mean, the Vikings don't even know who their quarterback is right now.
It's true. All right, week 18. We got Seattle in Arizona.
Seattle.
Tampa Bay in Carolina. I feel like Terry Bradshaw, but with more hair.
Yeah.
Atlanta in New Orleans.
Atlanta.
Okay. Minnesota in Detroit.
Detroit.
Philly in New York.
Philly.
Chicago in Green Bay.
Green Bay.
LA in San Francisco.
San Francisco. I know you want that to be different, but
you know what? They just can't beat them in the regular season.
Yeah, I know. It's tough.
You know what? If that was in the first round of the playoffs, I think it's a lot closer to a coin flip.
Yeah, it is. You're right.
Don't care there. Jacksonville, don't care there. All right, and then Dallas in Washington. Gonna be Dallas, right?
Well, I mean, like, if they win that, so they're the 5th seed. Yeah, I think that if they go into that game as the 5th seed, and they're tied with San Francisco, they can't afford to sit players, so they have to play for the bye.
It won't matter. So even if they win, they must have some sort of head-to-head.
Then I'll say they sit players, and I'll say they sit players, and Washington wins the game. Okay.
Yeah, that game, if everything goes as the same, it will not affect the seedings. So in this scenario, we're 3rd. We're playing Green Bay at home. I think that's going to be a close game.
I hate it.
Yeah, because Jordan Love's got confidence, right?
And they just came in, 2 months ago and kicked our ass on Thanksgiving?
Like 3 weeks ago.
Well, no, like at this point in time.
Oh, yeah. At this point, yeah.
So I hate that. I think that's I would rather play the Rams. I would rather play the Falcons.
Yeah, we'll never play the Falcons. Because either the Falcons get in as 4th seed.
I just would rather play them.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Well, so there is actually the other scenario is if Green Bay jumps ahead of us, then we could potentially end up in. I could see us being in fifth seed. Um, a lot of other obviously games would have to happen. Like I was looking at this and I'm like, okay, the worst scenario for Detroit, Minnesota wins that game. Don't think that matters. We lose to Denver. Green Bay wins. New Orleans wins. I think it's probably better or worse for us. So next week, New Orleans beating LA, losing to Minnesota. Uh-oh. That's a big one. Chicago, other things that might matter. Seattle winning, Atlanta winning, New York winning, New York winning again, New Orleans. Actually, I'm not sure if that one would matter. What other things would be bad for us? Minnesota?
Losing games is the thing that matters. I mean, like, I just think that they're better than Minnesota, especially now. I think they're better than Denver, even though Denver's been playing better. But you get to play them at home, and I just don't think they're going to win against the Cowboys. So, like, to me, the realistic thing here is I think they are going to make the playoffs, and I think if you win a game from that point, I'll be thrilled. But like getting to the playoffs has got to be viewed as we've taken another step.
Yeah.
You know, like I don't think that anybody could say this team has regressed from what it was last year if they make the playoffs. So like, you know, you could
If we
even
don't win any, there is that scenario where we miss it. We got to lose out though, and I don't think we will.
If you win, if they miss the playoffs on like a 10-win team, I think you could still make the case the team has taken a step, but like it's an unfortunate step. But they need to lose twice to Minnesota to make that a reality, right? That's what's going to happen.
Yeah.
That's what's got to happen.
We'd have to lose all 4 games.
See, and I just don't think that that's. I just don't think that that's likely. I mean, that would be a collapse, I think, worthy of firing somebody to place blame.
Probably Aaron Glenn.
Right. So, like, if they lose out and miss the playoffs on a technicality, I would say I bet Aaron Glenn gets fired as a scapegoat.
Yeah. So it looks like we can end up in a variety of situations. I've seen us at the 7th seed, the 6th seed, and the 3rd seed. I've not figured out a way to get us to play Atlanta yet, but there might be a way. But we're almost, I think one victory clinches the playoffs for us, and that's a huge deal. But we really want that 3rd seed, that home. Can you imagine if we did this and we're like, oh, we snuck in a 7th seed, and now we got to go play Dallas in Dallas? It's going to be a blowout.
I mean, everybody's getting blown out.
Yeah, they're playing really well.
Yeah, they're playing.
So, anyway.
So do you remember like months ago when I said that Dak had all the leverage on his next contract? If he'd played like shit, that would have been true. Now he's playing like he might be the MVP frontrunner at this point. And
if he might.
If he wins the MVP, get ready for an NFL quarterback deal that you never thought you'd see.
Not Ohtani big.
Did you hear what he did?
No.
He deferred 680 of his $700 million to a time period between 2034 and 2042. So that
you get like $1 million a year up until then or something like that.
So the dude makes $45 a year in advertisements. So he doesn't need the contract money to just be rich as fuck.
Yeah.
So he's going to make his money outside of baseball in the short term, and then he's going to live fat off of it the decade after. And what's going to happen is
heirs forever.
that would be like Tom Brady being like, "Hey, I'll play for 500,000
league minimum. Just that's all I need."
Yeah, I will take minimum wage so that we can go out and spend all the money you would have given me on other guys to go win titles. I wouldn't be surprised if in the next half decade, if the Dodgers win multiple World Series titles.
Yeah, I saw the number, the 10-year, $700 million. I'm like, holy shit!
It's a huge. I honestly believe that in my lifetime, I will see a team sign a player to $1 billion contract.
In your lifetime? Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's almost there already, right?
It has to be in baseball.
70% of the way.
Right.
Yeah. He is making, I believe I saw that he is making more money than the highest paid players in the NFL, the NHL, and the NBA combined.
So in baseball, the highest paid player on an average per year basis was Max Scherzer and Justin Verlander, and they were at like 43.85 million. So his jump to 70 is an 87% increase over the next highest paid player in baseball, who at that time was the highest paid player ever in baseball.
Yeah.
It's an absolutely insane number. It's an insane number. And he's totally worth it because he's two players.
Yeah. He's the best pitcher in baseball and he's the best batter in baseball.
I mean, he's legitimately two players. So like I was trying to, my dad always freaks out about the contract numbers and stuff, doesn't matter who it is. And I was trying to tell him, like, you could argue
nobody's worth that, right?
Right. You know, you should pay the teachers, you know. So like but I was trying to argue it's really like the Dodgers signing two guys at $350 million a piece, which is still ridiculous.
Yeah.
Which would still be the largest contract in baseball I've ever heard of. But like you could make the case that like he's literally two players worth those deals.
Yeah.
So yeah, an absolute unbelievable talent. So
all right, let's do this a quick preview, Detroit versus Denver. What are the three things that you want to see in the game?
You have to make less mistakes. The team cannot get down. They cannot get down early. They have to be within one score at halftime. And like get the ball. Like you have to be you cannot put yourself in a position where you get down 2 scores because the team just cannot come back from that. I know they did once against the Bears.
A bad team.
Yeah. Like several weeks ago, but like that's not how they're built.
Yeah.
So don't get down early. Don't turn the ball over. Punt the ball every once in a while. Stop going for it on fourth down.
Yeah, I would really like to see our offensive line kick back up to where they were, give him a little bit more protection because he does not do well under pressure when he's flustered. He makes mistakes. And I think that offensive line will help. I think Amon-Ra St. Brown has to come back from his worst game of his career. He played really poorly this past game. And our secondary they have to do something good. A turnover, shutting they just can't be the thing that costs us games. Yes, that part of that means we need to get some pressure and stuff, but pressure or not, like those guys have to do their job. And yes, pressure makes it easier. You have to do your job for fewer seconds per play, but do your job. Don't be the reason that we're losing. And that's a big piece of why we've been losing the last month or so. So those are my three pieces. I think that we're going to win. I think it's
the Rams just released game. Mason Crosby. Sorry.
Oh, did they?
Yeah, that was quick.
Yeah. Well, they didn't even start him last week. Haversink went in and
boy, the Packers game was a nightmare with kicking.
Was it? I didn't actually.
I think the dude missed 3 field goals.
Oh God, that was against the Giants, right?
It was.
Yeah, I watched the very, very end, the last 2 minutes. But anything else for the good of the crew um, before we bust out of here?
Okay.
No, nothing.
What'd you want?
Yeah.
Would you want me to,
Is
you
it
want me to say
anything else?
something to them?
Anything else, Chad or anybody?
Thank you for showing up
left?
tonight. We had a great turnout. I think we were up to 8 at one point. I did bump into Joey at a PFF group chat this morning.
Nice.
He didn't like the chit chat that we had last week's pod, but then he didn't show up today, so we had to rely on the faithful Steve-O, Don Burr, Dr. Detroit, Hatters, Donkey Kong.
Donkey Kong, yeah.
Then I'll bet we had like the silent, your silent crew or whatever, like Kathy and Shannon was probably hanging out. They're probably the two that are still watching. So if you girls are in the chat, it's good to see you.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's getting a lot of fun. I liked that there was chatter in the chat this week. Sometimes there isn't, and it's really nice to see it. So
yeah. Well, let's hope for a Lions victory, a turn shit around kind of game, and I'd love to just beat the living crap out of them. Just really turn it around, like with an exclamation point. So we'll see everybody next Tuesday at 7. Hopefully, Victory Tuesday, and we can have a fun chat instead of lamenting what could have been, kind of like we did today.
Yeah, 100%.
All right, we'll see you guys. Peace.